Hi, my name is Jordan. I am a special education teacher from the UK. I share my passion for everything communication, sensory regulation, and fun lesson ideas for my classroom of disabled pupils aged 4 to 11. Each week, I am joined by experts in the field, answering your questions and sharing our knowledge and experience working alongside our beautiful young people. Let's get started. Hello, everybody. My name is Jordan, and welcome to the Sensory Classroom podcast. Today, I am joined by Faye, who is AAC Brothers on social media, a mum of two autistic boys who are huge advocates for AAC, and I was desperate to have her on here. Hello, Faye.
Hi.
Welcome. So, first of all, could you tell us a little bit about your family setup?
Yeah, so there's me, my husband Matt, and then our two sons, Sullivan and Tristan. Tristan's 8 and Sullivan is 6.
And when did you start sharing your story online?
Yeah, I think it was only a few months ago now, but with how passionate I am about AAC, and you see lots of speech and language therapists on Instagram, which is great, but you don't see a lot of parents who are big AAC users and advocates, and I think it's important to show that.
Yeah, that was what completely enamored me with your account, actually. You kind of came out of nowhere, and it was exactly, I feel like, what the space is needing. A massive advocate for AAC, and also showing parents how it can just integrate fully into your life in everything you do and the impact it can have on the family, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's go back. Because lots of the people listening here, yes, they're teachers and they might not have even heard of AAC before. They might not even know much about autism, but also lots of parents may be in those early stages of wondering, if their child has autism or if AAC is right for them. So let's go. It's important to go back maybe. So what was your understanding of autism before your boys came along?
Next to nothing.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think what most people think is it's Rain Man and things like that. People like that. I did used to see people with special needs that were what I now know is stimming, but I had no clue that was autism. It wasn't until Tristan was a baby and was flapping his hands and I Googled it and it said autism and I was like, what does that mean? And then you go into a rabbit hole and you're like, oh, this is autism. I had no clue about this.
So were they the kind of things you were seeing? Was it the stimming, like flapping hands that you were seeing initially that gave that clue?
Yeah, stiffening up, the lack of speech, high anxiety, not wanting to go out. Tristan, bless him, was like an anxious little bundle when he was a baby and a toddler. He found it so hard to even just go to the supermarket, to a park. He hated being around other children. It was really tough.
I suppose having that idea in your head of autism, was that helpful? Was that comforting? Was that scary? Like what did that kind of self-research do for you and your feelings about what was to come, I suppose?
I knew after reading that he was autistic. But in my opinion, health visitors look at you like you're nuts when you say that. And everyone,
Because he was so young.
yeah, and I just feel like when you say that, everyone around you looks at you like you're crazy, even though you know that is, something is off, something isn't going as it should be. And the health visitor I had even said, "Oh, he doesn't look autistic," and I was like, okay. And then she's like,
Yeah.
oh, everyone's a bit autistic. This is a health visitor saying this to me. Yeah. So and as well, she was like, oh, he's watching too much TV. You need to get him out and socialize him more. I was then
So
pregnant.
completely parent blaming.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%. And I was pregnant with Sullivan when Tristan was 18 months old, and I was taking Tristan out 2-3 times a day with hyperemesis, trying to socialise him, taking him to baby classes, and he was screaming and crying and melting down. Everyone's looking at me like, and I just didn't know what to do. I'm being told that it's my fault, that I need to take
By the
him out of.
expert.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
need to get him out more, turn off the TV. And I was doing everything I could. And I knew that he was different.
Now you know what you know. because you're an expert in your boys, but you're also an expert in autism and AAC, I have to say.
Mm.
What would you say to the health visitor now if you could have a conversation with her?
Go and get some training.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it comes down to, doesn't it? It doesn't come down to she wasn't being cruel. She genuinely didn't know, I suppose.
But it's wild to me that these professionals come into our homes and are essentially judging us, but then they don't have all the tools they need to be able to guide us on
Yeah.
things,
Yeah. So
like
judgment without
autism.
guidance isn't helpful, is it?
No, not at all. Not at all. I do think there needs to be early years training in AAC, especially because when you get told your child's flagging up for autism or something like that, it's all doom and gloom, and when you're left with my child might not ever talk or the possibility of that, you go into a hole. You don't know where to turn. Whereas I think if they steered it in the direction of, speech might not be here yet or might not, but here's an alternative. I can, point you in the right direction. Even just a simple, if a health visitor comes into your home and suspects that your child is autistic, they have so many leaflets anyway. Why not pull out a little simple symbols cards or something similar? I just think it needs to change.
Yeah, I agree. And there is so much out there on social media now, but you need to know what words to search for to find that information. There's also a lot of misinformation out there as well. So it's really hard for parents to navigate this stuff on their own without that guidance, I suppose, which is also why I'm so grateful that your social media account is here now, because it's a safe place for parents to turn to with realistic expectations because you've been there, you get it. And nothing that you say that you're doing is unrealistic because you're doing it. It's not
Yeah,
like, and I feel like sometimes my expectation can be unrealistic for parents because I have 9 teaching assistants in my class and I have training
yeah.
and all these kind of years of experience. Whereas actually, you come from a different place. You come from a place of, I get it. I've been literally in your shoes. Like, I've walked this path, and actually, you could, I've made the mistakes for you almost so that you don't have to, and kind of come with me, I suppose, is so
Definitely,
helpful. So,
definitely.
AAC, alternative communication, has that, what does it look like for your children, I suppose? What does it look like in your home using AAC?
So now both my boys use Vocus. They use Grid. And it has just been so life changing for us. I can't even put into words how life changing it is. But we didn't start off with Vocus. We did start off with Tristan. We started off with objects of reference photos, and then we moved on to symbols. And then
Can
he
you
had a
explain what objects of reference look like in your home?
So we would take a photo of his bottle and print that off, laminate it, and put it on the wall. And then if he wanted that, he would go up and point at it.
And same for the object, you might have the actual bottle he might
Yeah, yeah,
use. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah. We are so lucky because in our town we've got a charity run early years called Tracks Autism, and that is where our AAC journey began, really, because I had no clue about AAC before then. And we walked in there and visuals everywhere. They had a brilliant communication lead called Emma, who now works at my boys' school as well. So she's been with them through their whole journey. And she made Tristan his first communication book that was full of symbols. This is when he started to understand symbols because he clocked onto that quite quickly, actually. And I remember the first time because, in the early days before AAC, it was really hard.
Yeah, what did that look like, I suppose? Because then I suppose parents can then understand where you're coming from and might be able to relate to their situation. So what did it look like before AAC?
Well, Tristan couldn't point at that moment in time. So this is like between 2 and 3 years old. A lot of frustration, a lot of meltdowns. He could hand lead and pull by clothing, but still sometimes it wasn't enough to get the message across of what he needed. And it would just cause him a lot of frustration.
Yeah, I was going to say, so he's incredibly frustrated because he knew what he wanted and he just couldn't make his needs known. I mean, God, imagine that
Yeah.
frustration and anxiety as well. You said he was already an anxious child. That'd only make you more anxious, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I was pregnant at this point as well with Sullivan. So I was just a ball of anxiety. I just didn't know where to turn. We visited a mainstream nursery and I was just like, I cannot see my child in here. It was just packed full of children. And they were like, oh, there is an autistic child in here, and they couldn't find him. And I was like, yeah. So I was like, no, we can't send him there. And then we heard about Track's autism and we visited there, and they were just so welcoming. They weren't shocked by any of his behaviors or his anxiety, and they just got him straight away. And I've never felt more comfortable leaving my child somewhere than I did with them.
Yeah, I suppose because he was understood and loved for everything he is and everything that you love about him, they loved and saw and understood. And I guess you knew that even if they didn't understand, they'd do their best, just like you would, to try and understand and meet his needs. That must be so comforting for a parent having not had that experience before.
Definitely. And I think as well, communicate like you're communicating with their, whether that is gestures or something, and you see that and you're like, "Oh, there are other children like my child." It's like stepping into a new world. And it's a world of positivity, I would say, when you find a tribe of people that are just living the same life as you, understand your child.
Yeah, I completely agree. I see that with parents then when children start my provision actually, they might have been in mainstream for 5 years or more, and the children are benefiting because 'cause they're finding peers and having their needs met and finding a safe environment, but the parents are benefiting too because finally at the gate, they're not being judged or shamed or stared at. They're being welcomed in and comforted and with amazing advice from people and people that just get it. And you can just see their whole body just relaxes because they haven't got to hold all of this. And it's quite isolating otherwise, isn't it? And they're not on their own. They will be invited to birthday parties or whatever it is. All of a sudden they can just let all go because they're in this safe space. How old was he when he went to tracks?
3. Tristan was 3. Sally started at 2.5 because we knew straight away with Sally. Sally's lucky because Tristan was the learning curve for us, and then Sally, we were just expecting him to be autistic, so we were just like, yeah, we know what to do now.
Have you noticed a difference in them and or in their progress because of that, or has it made no difference at all?
Yeah, 100%, because from when Sally was born, he has had AAC around him.
Yeah, of course.
He has like that. Just he watched Tristan using it, and he was like, "Oh, that's how I get what I need." And then he was using the symbols. We made him a communication book at 2, and he was using it. And then when Tristan got his AAC device, Sully was like, "Oh," and he was using it. I was like, said to Matt, "We're gonna have to get him one."
Yeah.
Like, look at him, he's nailing it.
How did you get access to those Focus or those AAC, those high tech devices? Because I think that's a real barrier for parents often.
So Tristan, his communication team at school, they'd been sort of trialing him for, a few years on, but he was very set in his ways about his communication book because that is what he'd had
Yeah,
from
it's your
3.
safety, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then his communication lead at school, she made a grid set that reflected his communication book on a school voca. And that's when he started using it. And then she was like, right, let's trial it at home over the Easter. And we brought it home. And I think when you take it home and start using it at home, like any AAC, whether it's symbols, whether it's vocas, when you implement that in your everyday life at home, they're like, oh, mummy's doing it now. So, and then it gets the ball rolling and then they start using it more and more and more.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because I suppose people with autism can become so rigid in their patterns that it doesn't mean they don't know how to use it, or it doesn't mean they don't want to use it, but it might not even occur to them that they could use it at home. It's so rigid in their patterns that this is what I do at school and this is what I do at home. So if it doesn't come out of the bag at home or at school, let's not blame either one. If it doesn't come out of the school out of the bag in a certain setting, then it might not even occur to them that they even could. So we need to be modeling that, don't we? So what does
100%.
and I know you're a huge advocate in modeling. This is what I love about you and your account. What does modeling look like in your home? Where does the voca go? How do how does it look?
So the Vocas are, we have the Vocas out all the time, and the boys use them for requesting like breakfast, what they want for lunch, what they want for dinner. But what we try to do is we try to sort of intrude. So if you've ever done more than words, intruding. So what we do is if we're playing with toys, or so you'll probably see a video on my account of Sully doing Goldilocks and the Three Bears. So we had the characters are Goldilocks and the Three Bears and all that, all too hot, too cold for the porridge. And he loves it. When we do things like that, he just loves it. And we model it, and then we're playing with the toys, and then he just does it on his own now.
Yeah. Yeah. So not only are you using it in everyday life, like for food or where you're going in the day or answering questions and all those kind of things, but you're also purposefully facilitating opportunities, really rich opportunities in order to model and use that, like setting up a play setting or putting their favorite characters when you're watching a TV program, for example, you make sure the characters are on their device or you have symbols for them to facilitate you being able to model in all the contexts.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's important for parents to learn how to edit the vocals and add and personalize it, because that is where you see them using it more in everyday life, and it takes the pressure off of them, because sometimes my boys don't want to use their voca. Sometimes they don't want me intruding, and I listen to that. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. We can just play with the toy. But editing them so that it's got things they enjoy on it, it just it just promotes it so much, and then you're getting different types of communication. Recently we had a situation at school where Tristan's been a bit uncomfortable with another child at school, and he's been able to communicate that. And that, as sad as it is that he's got a situation at school where he's not feeling comfortable, the fact that he can now communicate that and navigate his voca is incredible.
Yeah. When people are saying that it's changed our life, AAC has changed our life, that's what they're talking about, isn't it? They're talking about it validating what the student is going through. It helps you understand what they know, what they're going through, their feelings. So rather than guessing all the time, which can be so much confusion for parents and so much frustration for children because you're getting it wrong, actually, by having that device or low tech, high tech, whatever it is, by having that access for them to be able to be understood is life changing. That is not an overused word. Like it is literally life changing for relationship building, lessening dysregulation, all of it, isn't it?
It really is. And that's why it's so frustrating that it's proving so difficult for parents to be able to get these high tech devices, and they're having to meet certain criteria to get these devices, because we know that there are, low tech like symbols and stuff, but we have to be honest, not all of that relates to all children. Some children just, they're not motivated by that, but they're motivated by tablets, they're motivated by iPads. So if they're given the opportunity to trial one of them and then be able to have it to communicate with, that would be
Yeah.
life changing. But there's so many barriers at the
Yeah,
moment.
there's so many expense and time, and yeah, like you say, having to prove that you can do certain things are all such huge barriers that absolutely shouldn't be in the way at all. Yeah, there's so many benefits to high tech version in comparison to low tech. Also, even things like losing symbols, we're constantly losing symbols in my classroom, and it's so frustrating. They get posted somewhere or eaten or ripped or lost behind a cupboard, whatever. They are constantly getting lost or wet or whatever. And actually, that doesn't happen with a high-tech device. It's instant, it's always there, it's consistent, it's always in the same place, you can always find it in the same place, and I think that no wonder they prefer that. And also things are instant as well. I mean, even if you're really fast, it could take an hour to from needing a symbol to making it, laminating it, getting the Velcro on and putting it in the book. That's fast as well, an hour. That's like
Yeah.
if you're fully committed to doing it there and then with no distractions. So much can happen in that hour. It's not quick enough. It's not enough. Whereas on AAC, what? It's 5 seconds, 10 seconds max, and you've got it there. It's ready to use and it's permanent and it's permanently there. Again, such a huge benefit for parents and teachers and the student as well. It's a no-brainer, of course, that's better, which why is why it's so frustrating to me that children have to so often prove that they can use paper-based systems first, because there are so many flaws in that system that don't exist in AAC, uh, high-tech AAC. So they may not get as frustrated, or they may be able to access that a little bit better. Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, definitely.
What helped you to decide what system to use, or was it just that, it was offered to you and that they took to it? Or was there some kind of trial and error thought process around which system to choose?
So our school is a smart box school. So that's where Tristan first trialed the Voca, and that was with Grid.
Yeah. So it makes sense that if that's what he already knows that kind of symbol system, he already
Yeah,
uses widget, it just makes
yeah,
sense that it would all match with school. Okay.
yeah. And then obviously Sullivan has grown up with widget symbols and Grid, so he just instantly took to that as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
Because they're all much of a much, isn't there? So, and like they're all similar in expense and all those kind of things. There's lots of things to like navigate. But yeah, that's often what I say. Like, what symbols do they already know, or what
Mm.
systems are they already using? We'll then go for that. What are the school using, or what do home feel comfortable with? What do they already know? Because ultimately, then it's going to be used more, and then it's going to be successful, isn't it? If they already know a whole language of symbols, why choose a different language of symbols? Just stick with what they already know.
Yeah, exactly. And you might trial one system and think, oh, do you know what? They're not understanding this or whatever, and then you can trial another one. And I think that's why it's so important to be able to get these devices on the NHS, because you've got a team of people on the NHS that are experts in this. And if something's not working, they can come in and go, right, let's have a look here. What can we change? And they can do these things pretty fast. Whereas,
Yeah, that's
you know,
really great advice. That is such great advice. I've got 50-50 in my class, actually. 50% of them parents have not wanted to wait, not wanted to go through the barriers of paper-based systems and proving and all of those kind of things, because it is often a long wait, and they've just bought it, which on the surface is wonderful. How wonderful that parents can purchase these things. But yeah, you're absolutely right. When it gets broken, it's them then that has to fix it, or it has to go through their insurance. Or when they need an updated system, it's them that has to do it. Or when they don't get offered training. So often it's not really modeled in the official ways, or not edited officially how it should be, or whatever. And yeah, there's not somebody checking in and checking how it's going, how the progress is, if they need anything added to it. Whereas if you do go through the NHS, and through speech and language often, then through the NHS, then yes, okay, you might have to wait a little bit longer. Yes, okay, you might have to go through more barriers. But then for life, I believe,
hmm yeah,
they have got training, support, replacements, updated systems. When AAC naturally grade their system more every 3 years, you get the new app. When an iPad gets thrown and smashed, or left in the rain, as we always get, or dropped in the bath we've had, it gets replaced. If they need a new case, it gets replaced. So there are so many financial, but also just time and just quality assurance by doing it that way. And I'm really pleased to hear that you find the same, actually.
yeah. So we have bought Sully an iPad because we're still waiting for his referral on the NHS. But obviously that's because we've got a lot of experience with Grid, and we knew that that is the system for him. But Tristan has a device on the NHS, and we've had where his Voca got, I think, trodden on or something, and the screen broke. And the turnaround to get a new one sent out, it was within the same week. So he, like, within a few days, like, they came and got the old one, sent him out a new one. And, iPads are pricey, and replacing them all the time. I mean, you can get these covers. We've got one for Sully on Amazon and things, but our children are strong. So if they're going to break something, they're going to do it properly.
Yeah, and sometimes it's accidental as well. Like I say, we've had
Yeah.
one that's was too near the water tray table. We want these iPads out as well. We don't want them safe in a bag that are tucked away and too precious to break. Actually, that's something I find with parents that have bought their own is they're so precious about not breaking them that actually it means that they're too scared to use them and have them out. But we had this AAC device right near the water table because we were using it, because that's what we wanted to do. And of course, you can imagine what happened. It got absolutely soaked, and the screw went all wibbly and it didn't work. And then they had to pay to replace it. And I felt awful, but also we need it out. It's gonna get used. We want it to be as used as their speaking voice would be, which is 100% of the time when they're awake and they become, tech gets vulnerable and it gets old and it gets damaged and it gets, yeah, it needs updating and all of those things. And we're so lucky to have the NHS. So many countries don't have that option, so we have to take advantage of that. In fact, I was speaking to some AAC organizations, asking them, why are your apps so expensive? It's so inaccessible to parents. Some of these apps were like £800, and then plus the iPad, plus the case, plus it's just crazy, and it is going down. I've noticed even in the last year, they've kind of halved their prices. They're usually around £300 or £400 for the app now. But it just still seems insane, and they could justify it by their American-based systems for the most part. And in America, all the children have health insurance, and they go through health insurance to get their AAC device. So it wasn't the parents paying. But the problem is with that is the price is the same in the UK, and we don't have that system. We don't have the health insurance, and we have the NHS. So we need to be utilising the systems that we have, which is the NHS, and children are, able to access that. Then I feel like we should be taking advantage. But what you say about getting your iPad first whilst you're waiting, I think that's the ideal. If you can, you
Mm.
putting the app on a device that you've got whilst you're waiting, because it often is 18 months to wait for the NHS to
What
buy.
what I think is helpful is when schools have the iPads that the children can trial. Like it's the
Mm,
school's iPad, but like with Tristan, he had the school iPad for months before they were like, right, let's refer. But I know not all specialist schools do that. They don't. I think that every classroom should have a device sat there, and if the teacher can do modelling, or if a child's interested in it, then they can maybe discuss that with the parent and say, oh, your child's really interested in AAC. I think this might be a go-to for them, and then discuss it as a whole. But only some schools do that. Like, I'm grateful that our school done that, because I don't know if my boys would have been as far with
yeah.
AAC if they hadn't have trialed it.
No, I completely agree. Our school didn't provide it. They provide lots of iPads. We've got 8 iPads in our room, but wouldn't provide the app. So I fundraised for one app for it and then put the same license on all of the devices. So we've got 8 devices now with AAC. And yeah, my students have come on leaps and bounds. It's actually proved then to the NHS and speech and language that they can do it. That's been the hurdle. We've skipped through so many hurdles because they've proven that they can do it, and then they're on the pathway now. And without that, we wouldn't have been able to do it. And that's a specialist provision with EHCPs. Teachers shouldn't have to be paying for this stuff on their own. Like, it's crazy, and so many teachers are. It just shouldn't be the case. It just really shouldn't be the case. It's so backwards and it's so unfair. In mainstream, we would never tape up a child's voice. It would be completely seen as um oh my God, can you imagine? It would be in the news, wouldn't it? The teacher would go to prison. It just wouldn't happen. But ultimately, that is what we're doing by not offering total communication. So whether it's high-tech device, symbols, photos, objects of reference, sound buttons, all those beautiful things that you mentioned in the beginning. If we're not giving them access to that, we are literally putting our hands over their mouth. And then wondering why we're seeing behavior, frustration, anxiety, school refusal. You know,
Yeah.
it's
And I
mad
think
to me.
I think as well, with the way things are going with EHCPs in the government, we're going to have a lot of higher needs children in mainstream settings for longer now, because they're making it impossible to get EHCPs in place quick enough in order for these children to move to specialist settings. So I think that teachers in mainstream schools need training on AAC as well and implementing that in the classroom. Because if you want to make an environment inclusive, like the government keep going on about, then you've got to use different forms of communication, and you've got to start training the teachers that are in these mainstream settings.
Yeah, and that starts from teacher training, doesn't it? I totally agree. Teacher training is so poor for special education just in general. And you're absolutely right. All teachers, special education teachers, whether they're in a specialist setting or not. And also visuals help all children. Like I remember being in year 6 and one looking at, the teacher would write in words, but would write what we were doing that day. And I needed that visual to feel less anxious and to know what to expect. It's predictable. And I liked that. I remember really liking it, looking through the window before we were even in school, because I wanted to know what I was doing that day. And yeah, visuals don't hurt. Good autism practice is just good practice, whether that's AAC or movement breaks or using fidget resources or tools, it's all just good practice. You will notice that it will help all children. There is absolutely no reason why we shouldn't have that in all classes. And it starts with teacher training, and that can either be at the degree level, when you're actually training to be a teacher, or schools like, come on, Senkos, like, what are you using your training for? Safeguarding, safeguarding, safeguarding. Yes, that's so important. But so is this. And that has to be alongside it, I think, because like I say, oh God, in my mainstream class, I would say 5 out of every 30 minimum have special educational needs and could be maybe 1 in every class could be in a classroom like mine, which is incredibly high needs. And these are guys are in mainstream. They're in mainstream until year 6. Some of them even end up going into secondary school. It's crazy. I mean, Cornwall's particularly bad. We've got 1 special needs school in the whole of the county, so
Goodness.
it's particularly poor, I have to say. But it is happening nationwide.
It's just
Yeah,
it's crazy to say inclusion when you've got high needs children going into classes of 29. That cannot be inclusive. I'm luckily and fortunate enough that my children have never been in a mainstream setting, but I've got friends who have had to fight for years to get their children into a specialist setting. And the mainstream teachers just they're not equipped. They have no idea about these children. Some of them, some do, some have some training, but for the most part, they're out of their depth. It's trying, and I get it. It's trying to juggle 29 children
yeah.
and maybe 1 or 2 with high needs. I mean, hats off to them.
I honestly wouldn't know I wouldn't know how to do that, and I've got lots of experience because yeah, you're juggling so many different needs. Oh my God, the differentiation between the two is massive, especially when you get to the upper school. It's massive. I suppose I what I do want to see is more training, but also belonging. It can look completely inclusion, yes, but belonging is I think is even more important than being included almost is is even if the one child in your class and the 29 are doing completely separate things, but this one child in your class is doing a completely separate thing because that's what they need, but they feel belong, like they feel loved and seen and safe and heard, and the other children are encouraged to include them wherever they can, even if it's just with love and understanding. That's the first step, I think. And then
Definitely.
it's sensory curriculums, and all of those things, which I'm so passionate about. I know I am. But actually it starts with just belonging, seeing them, wanting them in your class. That is the first step. And lots of teachers do that really well, even though they are very aware that their class is not meeting this child's needs. But my God, do they love them and want
Mm,
to do the best for them, and buying all this stuff and researching all these things, and are in my DMs. I see it, in my DMs saying, I've got this child, he's clearly not coping, what can I do? What can I do? And they're the teachers that we just want to hold on to because, even if you're not feeling supported or trained or anything, just the fact that you are wanting the best for this child, and even though you know that you're not meeting their needs and you're trying your best, is the start, I would say.
definitely.
Um, what advice would you give to, I suppose let's start maybe teachers and parents maybe, for a new AAC use family? They've just got access to this system. what advice would you give them?
It's not going to happen overnight. It's a long-term thing. You might not see results straight away, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to work. Keep modeling where you can. Follow your child's lead, I would say. So when they're open to being a little bit more, with the iPad, then lean into that. If they're like, then lean away. I would just say that speaking isn't everything. And I think when you let that go, you're going to be much happier, because I used to be like that. I used to be like, when's he going to talk? When's he going to talk? I used to be sitting in front of him going, mum, 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 dad, dad, dad. And he used to get so frustrated because he wants to be able to say those things, but he can't. So finding an alternative for us, has been life changing. They can say what they want. Okay, it's not in the usual way, but when you take that pressure off of not only your shoulders, but their shoulders, and give them alternatives, they're just going to flourish.
It's incredible advice. It's a question I get often in real life, actually, with the parents in my class. Will they ever be able to talk? And it's a question I can't answer.
Yeah,
I say, I've worked with lots of children. Some do, some don't. But I think ultimately what they're asking isn't if they're going to talk, but it's, am I going to be able to connect with my child, or am I going to understand my child and have a relationship with my child? That's really what they're asking. And AAC can give that.
definitely. And I think it's important to remember as well that some children do have words and their parents do hear their voices, but sometimes that is echolalia or something. That's not like they're not communicating to get requests or anything like that. So even some talking children need extra supports as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
So you know, if we can get that understanding going, no matter what form that comes in, whether that is speech or symbols or AAC device, that's the important thing.
Absolutely. That total communication approach, accepting all as equal. It's interesting you mentioned that, actually. It reflects the podcast episode that came out last week, actually. So it'll be the week before this one. And yeah, it's all about the total communication approach. So if you're hearing this and reflecting on this, then maybe go back and listen into that last week's one as well. Thank you so much, Faye. This has been so helpful and I think so encouraging for those parents to take those first steps and even know where to go. They might have heard these buzzwords flying around and not really know where to turn. And you've given some real great wisdom and advice. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Where can people follow you to see your story and hear a little bit more about your family?
So I'm on Instagram, AAC Brothers.
Thank you so much. And I highly recommend you follow Faye over there because it's just gorgeous.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.